How you doing today? I want to talk to you about a leader's investment in multiplication and kind of like 5 tips I would give you about how to use and build an organization that goes beyond your shadow. But more importantly, how do you build legacy? And I believe that the way to get to legacy, something bigger and beyond your shadow, is through the multiplication of leaders. It sounds good, and I'm really excited about this. And I know a lot of people get excited when they hear this message, that the idea is multiplying leaders. But what I've also discovered is that most people don't have a real roadmap to it, don't really understand the concept is beyond just the idea of it. And so I want to help you today with this 5 steps of real intentional multiplication and how investing in that as the leader in your organization will lead to this idea that you'll expand your leadership, you'll build something bigger that can withstand your parts of the shadow in the organization, and it can be bigger than you. And so I want to help you with the first one. There's 5 pieces. The first one is really you, the leader, your mindset. Are you a multiplier? Do you think like a multiplier? The first thing I want to help you with is being a multiplier. I think in order to actually build something bigger than yourself, you have to have a decision that you're going to be a multiplier. So what does a multiplier look like? A multiplier is somebody who invests in the next generation of leadership. You're building up today's leaders for tomorrow's opportunities. And so how do you do that? Well, I've developed a bunch of things throughout my career where I've done this successfully over and over. And I'm really thankful for that I've been able to have an attitude or a mindset that starts with multiplication. And maybe it started for me from this idea that I wanted to allow others to do bigger things. And I got excited about that. And that's fair. I maybe early on, I also didn't like to do certain parts of a company. That's also a fair comment about my leadership style. But I learned some things real quickly that if I took my skills, my strengths, and invested in other bright people, much brighter than myself in many circumstances, I would give them plenty of room, maybe not at first, to actually grow and expand. And so the first thing that started was an attitude or a mindset that I was wanting to invest in young leaders who really want tomorrow's opportunities. And they want it now, and they're leaders. And so how did I start there? Well, I developed a principle that I've seen over time called the 70% rule. Now, I've seen principles like this taught in decision making, but I use this in multiplication this way. Can I actually allow someone bright, talented to lead? Are they doing something in such a way that they're doing it as 70% as good as I would do it? And can I then invite them with some room to go grow in that 30% piece? See, I don't think you should necessarily go hire someone that isn't capable of excelling at leadership and equip them. But if I can get somebody who's in a version that I was much longer ago and help them grow up, well, I need to create room for them. So the first part of this is your mindset that you're going to take the time intentionally and invest that in leaders within your organization. And the second part of the mindset, if you're going to accept the idea that you have to put time into it and you have this 70% rule, then you also have to give the time back to these people and allow there to be a process of growth. And finally, you got to be able to be spotting people that are capable of this. So the mindset is so critical. You got to be working on yourself. You got to be spotting other people that are capable. You got to invest time in them. And finally, be intentional about that. That's key 1 to this whole process. Key number 2 is this idea of the invitation. In order to have a multiplication kind of environment, a culture, if your mindset is there, then it's going to show up in your actions. And how does it show up in your actions? Well, you have to be looking for those people that I discussed earlier. You have to identify capable leaders who, with your intentionality, are excited to do something and stay on mission for the company and do something bigger. So when you have a mindset that you want multiplication and you're a multiplier, you start to spot people who have the right effort, the right attitude, and the right ability to embrace growth. in your organization. And so you start like looking at people much differently. And that's been my career. And so I want to encourage you to not only identify, but then you got to do the next step as part of this step too. You got to invite them into the journey. And so, that's really critical. This is like think apprenticeship. You are inviting them in to come along for the journey, that they're really good maybe at managing parts of an organization. They have some attributes where others want to fall under their leadership, but they lack at-bats. They lack some of your guidance. They lack the dirt under the fingernails wisdom that you've acquired over time. So this apprenticeship model that I want to encourage you with in your mind is a model where you ask them to come along, you invite them into the journey. You identify and then you invite, because an apprentice needs to come in and share in the experience, watch you do it. And then throughout time, as you start to put the progress of investment as to watching what you do, there's this process of the journey that's the next step. Come and do it with me. That invitation, step 3, this activation is the third tip that I would make, right? So mindset, this invitation of identifying people. And then there's this activation. There's a risk here, right? You got to take some steps. This person's been coming along as an apprentice and watching what you do. Very intentional. A lot of meetings about feedback. Why do we do it this way? Why do we do it this way? And then the next part of this activation is, okay, let's do it together. Now it's your turn to start doing this process. And I'm going to do it with you, but you're going to grab authority. You're going to actually start making some of the decisions for our organization. I'm going to take some risk with you because I see it. I'm going to use my words and validate you. I'm going to encourage you. I'm also going to critique you. Like there's a relationship building part. This isn't all always just like, oh, everything's amazing. Encouragement also comes through critique. And so through that process, there's this building up. And then finally, like once you've kind of put that investment in, like you are really investing all of the time in there, it's time to kind of like turn it over. So it goes from like this idea that, you watched me do it, we're going to do it together. And now you turn it over and you say, okay, it's your turn to do it. And I'm going to watch you. You take a real step back. You want to start to see progress in your organization, that there's evidence that you can grow through and beyond something that's bigger than you, that grows beyond your shadow. Start to see what it looks like where you're inviting people into a bigger story. Now it's the turnover. Are you handing off? That process, people always ask me, how long does that process of the handoff take? It's now their turn to lead, and you're watching them lead. From the start, the mindset, this investment, this idea of inviting people into this investment, activating that process in the turnover, turning it over to a leader, depending on where you find someone in that phase. I'm a big believer in free agency. I like to grow people up in our culture. I like talented people. I'll take someone experienced or inexperienced. I hire in a firm belief of effort, attitude, and ability. But people have certain attributes about them. They have a passion or a desire or a drive to want more. And so I go and spot those people. And so what's the phase of time and how long that takes? It's going to be a little bit different. I can't say to you that like this is a 2-year plan or a 4-year plan. But by example, when I think in our organization where I've done this, I have one of our now CEOs of our company where for the last 2 years, she's been in the role running and operating. The turnover happened. And it wasn't for another 18 months where the title followed. And so when you think in a 2-year window, she had gained up until that 2 years, lots of time, 5, 6 years, some do it with me. And then the handoff happened. The turnover happened. It's now your turn to lead. And I'm going to be there supporting you. And I didn't hand the title right away with it because I wanted to give her as much opportunity to have under my authority the opportunity to gain traction and grow within that 30%. we're talking about. Find her voice, see her identity in the whole thing. And it was at that point that what actually happened was the title turnover happened 18 months later. So here we are, 2 years removed, and plus actually longer than that now. And she is excelling in the category of being our chief leader. Why do I tell you that way? Because the process is a journey, but we set out to build a culture, and to actually really to strive at this idea of multiplication. So here we have an organization that's really bent now towards legacy, something that's going to be bigger than the large personality I have and the personality of what it does to cast a shadow on the organization. Real excited about the next future and journey of what's going on in that organization. And so I look forward to that. And so then finally, this last piece is about replication. Can you repeat this process? Can you now have this idea of an apprentice, a disciple, being discipled by you, this fancy term where you're mentoring and growing up leaders? Can now your leaders be mentoring younger leaders? And this process of multiplication doesn't just stop with one person. Can you build a culture up of multipliers within your organization? And I'd say if you can do that, then you actually will have an organization that's an activator, a multiplying organization. Those organizations I've noticed throughout time, whether they're for-profit or not, are on mission. The vision is regularly recast, and the people are excited about making sure they embrace their part of that. And they really are truly excited about their opportunities. What they have is and the bigger part of it. And so it's super exciting. And because of that, those organizations tend to be less volatile, more profitable, impacting more people. And it's not contingent on one person being in or out of the organization. There's lots of materials you can read on this idea of good leadership. And when I see and look back at what's been the most successful, multiplication, being a multiplier, is so critical to organizational depth. That's why we really launched this leadership development company called Beyond Your Shadow. We are so dedicated to this idea that legacy comes through multiplication. And so we came here today with this kind of 5 tips as a way for you to think about, break down how to bring intentionality to multiplication in your organization. And with that, we wish you the best. If you like this and more stuff like this, please follow us, share this. We want to get the word out. We care so much about this that some of the real breakage that happens in organizations is unnecessary because what we're so worried about is tactical instead of investing in the leadership depth within your organization. Thanks.